Hey, Caira, welcome to the Happy Healthy Caregiver podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me.
I love it, and I love your festive background. It's great. We have been trying to connect for a while, so I'm excited that I finally get to do this. I know you've got a lot going on, and I know that you're going to provide a lot of valuable insight, and your personal story is very inspiring and will help link other people to helpful resources. And before we get into that, though, I want to post something. I have this really fancy mason jar with quotes and things that I like. I call it the Happy Healthy Caregiver jar, and created it for a gift for my sister just to help inspire her when we changed the changing of the guard from me being primary caregiver from my mom to her. And it just, that's a big boulder that you're giving somebody. Um, so this anyway, here's what I pulled out for you today. It says she refilled her pitcher, and in doing so, she was able to refresh everyone around her.
Oh,
I know. What does that make you think of?
uh, um, well, for me personally, I think we all kind of hit rock bottom as caregivers somewhere along our journey. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. We're gonna do it if we haven't already.
Yep.
Um, and I remember when I hit rock bottom and I was so busy trying to hold up everything. And I didn't worry about myself. I didn't think about myself because everybody else's needs were more important. Everything else came first. And then I had someone challenge me to build myself back up. And it was probably the hardest thing I had done in a bit.
Mm-hmm.
But the surprising thing was, I went to the doctor for the first time in years. I went to the dentist for the first time in years. And I mean, even just that physical stuff. And then emotionally, I started building myself up. And then I started to realize that I could help more than I thought I could. I wasn't as stressed. The household became a lot gentler to be in. And I started doing things that I wanted to do. I didn't just totally forego my bucket list. And so it was a huge growth experience, I think.
I think
So that's
that's
what it
great.
makes me think of.
What we're, because I mean that's kind of what we're all about, is trying to flip this mindset of uh, you know, not just caring for those that you love, but caring for yourself and what that can look like for and how that can benefit it. So was there certain language or certain words that somebody used with you that it finally kind of clicked, or was it just a timing thing? Like what was it?
I got challenged to think about myself for 3 days. I went on a no barriers retreat, and as you know, they'll do that.
That's how we met. Yes.
Yes. And it was insane because I really wasn't at the best point at all when we met, and I was still on the phone with doctors actually from the retreat.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a mess. But I left there thinking, oh my gosh, I don't remember what it is to be me. And that probably sounds a little bit trite, but I was like, I don't remember the last time I worked out, or the last time. And I was even actually working out a little bit at that time because I worked out alongside my husband. But to work out for myself, by myself, on my schedule, to, give myself permission
Mm-hmm.
to say it's okay to take that 15-20 minutes. That's what that retreat really did for me. And for me, the biggest language barrier was giving myself permission. Was it's okay, go give yourself permission to take that 15, 20, 30 minutes, or 5-minute breaks. That was like where I started.
I love it. Well, and they do, like, they have this whole process through the No Barriers retreat, and applications will open again for other people to be able to experience that. Hopefully, I wish we could take everybody because it's
I know.
so awesome. And I'm happy to be a retreat leader now after we did that retreat in Moab, which was amazing. I remember one moment we had together was we both spent the night on cots underneath the stars, and it was really it was chilly. It got chilly and I was digging through my bag. I remember in the middle of the night putting my socks and my hat on, but I would take little peeks out of my sleeping bag and look at the moon and the stars and watch the moon move, throughout the night. And it was just a really a great memory, a very peaceful memory. And I know Heather, who's the founder or of the one who runs the No Barriers Caregiver program, she really hammers it into us that we're not allowed to talk about our care recipients and that we really need to focus on ourselves. And And that kind of has stuck with me, that, when we're talking to people, like, how are you? They're not asking how your loved one is, but how are you? It's
It was
amazing.
That was one of the most eye-opening things I remember from No Barriers. Is you go and she's like, okay, tell us about you. And you're not allowed to mention your care recipient. And you're going, I don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
And I had
Yeah.
been in advocacy. I mean, I wasn't, I've been a caregiver for over a decade. This was not a newbie kind of thing. I should be able to talk about this. And I realized I couldn't. And it was one of the most mind opening like exercises. And just simply, it's like, you can't mention that. And you're like, well, what do I
What
say?
else is there? It's like when you're parenting and you go on a date night, and it's like, if you can only just talk about your kids, like, if you can't talk about your kids, like, you gotta
Yeah.
talk about other stuff. Like,
Right. And you
um,
put a timer and you're like, after 10 minutes, you can't talk about the kids anymore.
yeah, yeah, because I mean, you got to like connect on various levels. Well, tell us, I've been privileged to meet you on this retreat and get to know your caregiving story a little bit. But for those who are just meeting you for the first time here, what explain a little bit about your situation. Who is Caira, and who do you care for? And we are talking about caregiving a little bit. We'll hit the self-care and stuff as well.
So, I am a military caregiver. My husband was in the Army. We jokingly say that we're old folks because my husband he is both pre and post 9/11. So he had already signed his commissioning paperwork.
What
Um,
does that mean? Like, I know it's like
oh,
military verbiage.
okay. So everybody kind of, well, I guess not everybody, like I still can't comprehend our kids are this old now. Um, but the terror attacks that happened on September 11th,
Mhm.
2001, my husband was already an ROTC cadet, so he was doing college and military at the same time when that happened. And then, as everybody knows, we went to war shortly after that. So, ironically, both my husband and my brother won some of the first waves because my brother had also entered in and become an officer in '99. My husband officially became an officer in 2001, but had his commit like he was active training
Mhm.
during ROTC years, so all the way back to '99 as well. And then, of course, September 11th happened, and our guys were shipped over fairly quickly. But I joke that because we're old stuff, because I mean, oh my gosh, that was 22 years ago.
I was
Like,
pregnant with my son Jacob, so I just look at Jacob and I'm like, yeah,
yeah,
he's a man now. He's man.
yeah.
Yeah.
Our oldest, was starting college, and we're like, wait, I wasn't even pregnant yet. So no, so that's what I mean by post and pre 9/11.
Hmm.
He went over, he had a parachute malfunction, actually during his training years. He totally ignored the fact that he broke his jaw and his hip and continued to move on. You know, the guys get so silly. I didn't want to roll. I didn't want to have to go to whatever. uh, so we did that. And then, of course, he spent 2 tours in Iraq.
Mm.
Um, During his tours in Iraq, he was in very heavy fighting, especially during the first tour. Um, he was near a major blast. It was two Land Rovers packed with explosives that brought down a building in front of him. And those things left him with what we call a traumatic brain injury, or a
Mhm.
TBI. Now, because we can't do anything easy in my household, he came back. We found out that there was some nerve damage and some other things. And this is the other thing. This was way before Army had warrior transition units. So when the guys get injured or the girls get injured, they send them to warrior transition units, or they medically check them out. There was none of that, really, because those didn't come around till '09. We
Mm.
were out by '07. We had an honorable discharge, but because there was so much what we call stop loss, as they geared up to go. So as you gear up to go back into a deployment, you're not allowed to change your job. You're not allowed to change your station. You're not allowed to change anything. And it's called stop loss. You
Mm.
can't get out. You can't move. I think we had 3 weeks in between him coming back from one and getting stop lost for the next one. because he was over for, I think, 11 or 12 months. And this is getting long. Came
No, it's interesting. Like, I mean, it's so
back.
common for you to, but it's like if you're not in a military caregiving role, like I don't, it's news to me.
So, he comes back. We had what they call block leave. They're like, you haven't seen your family in a while, go take some leave with your family. And you get a few weeks of that. And then he had 2 weeks after that. And you're not allowed to file anything because you're not allowed to come in. And then
Mhm.
you have 2 weeks after that. And then we were stop lossing. And so at that point, him and I were talking. This was the second tour. He was having trouble carrying body armor. He was already on a permanent profile. He couldn't run. He couldn't feel his legs. And there were just a lot of things happening at that point in time. And we talked about it. He asked about the possibility for a med board. They told him absolutely no, you'll deploy. Don't even
Wow.
think about it. Yeah. And because he had already deployed once on a permanent profile, them knowing he couldn't run. Yeah, go figure. Um,
It's like, yeah, crazy to me to think that,
I
yeah,
know, right? Yeah. It was totally crazy. His second deployment, he was already on profile because he had started losing feeling in his legs. And anyway, um, so, and he looked at me and he's like, I don't think I can do this. And well, as we were deciding what to do during that 2 weeks, the Army solved it for us. The Army says, we're giving you your contract's up. We're giving you an honorable discharge because you can't run. And totally wouldn't happen today, which is a good thing because they should med board you and all sorts of other stuff. But during that period of time, it was fairly common. I know a lot of soldiers went through this. And so we got out and we're like, ooh, hooray, civilian world, here we go. And everybody told me, they come back after injury, and it's really an odd thing for a military caregiver because Army does 12, at that point in time, we were doing 12 to 15 month deployments. So you see your spouse, they go off to war for 12 to 15 months, and you're realistically going, war is going to change someone, and they come back and there's all these things that are different. And you're like, well, what about this? And what about this? And, and they're supposed to do this whole process when they come back. They cleared my husband in about 4 days, which is totally unheard of.
rapid.
Yeah, very, very rapid. Normally it takes months to do your clearing. And so it was just really strange. But you notice things about, your spouse when they come back and you're like, well, what about this? And what about this? And we weren't allowed to go talk to the doctors back then. We weren't allowed to be part of that process at all.
Mhm.
And I finally was able to send a note in with him to one of his doctors saying, look, we're noticing X, Y, and Z. What should we do? And he wrote back on it, literally, we call it combat reintegration. You're being crazy. I was like, oh, okay. There were no TBI screenings at the time. They literally
Way to
had
validate your feelings too. Like,
yeah. Yeah. There was this checklist that they gave the guys on the plane, and they're like, do you have headaches? Have you lost your hearing? Which my husband did. He lost his hearing for 2 weeks, couldn't hear a thing.
so he checked all these things on the plane,
Yeah,
but then
absolutely.
4 day rapid, you're
Yeah.
good to go.
Yeah. And it took us, he got back in November. We were out. His terminal leave started in May.
Mhm.
But, till January, was it? No, it was December he got back. So like to that beginning of January, we were on that family leave, and then we had 2 weeks to try to figure out what to do. We were told he was getting separated, which was fine with us, honorable discharge, and we were getting out. And I say it was fine with us, but it was his career. This is what he wanted to do for his life. So
Mhm.
we had to deal with that aspect of it too.
Like grief.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Grief over this is what I want to do, but my body won't let me do it anymore. And they're telling me that there's nothing wrong with me. And it was this really surreal experience. And then you get cleared to get out. And there's like some financial side and some medical side. And they did that like in 4 or 5 days. And they're like, well, your discharge date is X, because it has, I don't know, in the world of the Army, it takes that long to clear the paperwork. So like by January, he was cleared. And like, I remember him laughing because he's like, I got to go into PT and sit there, and then I'm coming back, and I don't think I have to go into the office today. And so it was just like, I remember this weird, like February and March was like, I drove him in because he was having he didn't always drive. I drove him in. You know, we sat there and had lunch, and like literally, it, like he wasn't even in the office. It was the craziest period of time in my life.
Yeah. Just
Um,
like a blur of like what you're supposed to be doing. Like, how did you navigate all this? Like, what resources, where did you go to kind of get help on how to navigate this journey?
oh, well, at that point, nothing. I mean, there was nothing.
Okay.
You know, I had his checklist. Like he gets a, you're getting out, here's your checklist, you know. And it's at least I can speak to the Army now. It's so much better. Caregivers are involved. There's transition units. They have like temporary retired and permanent retired lists through. I
Mm.
mean, and those can take years to get through all your medical to see if you get better, if you're not going to get better. The system is just so much more inclusive and so much easier to navigate because they include the caregivers along the way. Um,
Smart. Yeah.
yeah,
I wish that was the case for you though, Kara.
yeah, it is odd because we got out, we hit the civilian world, and I'm like, I still have this list of like what in the world, and they told me it was just, you know, combat reintegration or combat fatigue, they called it. And I'm like, you know, what do I do with this? And so what really was the turning point for us, we'd been out a year, and during that time, I mean, I think military caregivers get this, you get joblessness. We didn't have a VA rating at the time. Those took a long time to get. I think it took us a year and a half.
Mm.
Uh, you know, it was an 18-month wait to even get enrolled in VA, which is kind of funny, because they're like, you know, the first 12 years or the first 12 months, you're supposed to report all this stuff. And his first intake appointment was 18 months away. It
Wow.
was,
And you need them like early.
yes. Yeah,
Yes.
you were supposed to report all this because that's the period of time that they have, like everything's treated and everything can be created back to service, but only if it's reported in the first 12 months. And so it was just this surreal experience. You know, things are going on, you can't get help. We were able to get some help through private doctors, but because it was private insurance, you know, the minute he said, look, I had a parachute fall, they're like, oh, that's combat related. We can't treat it because private insurance doesn't have to cover anything that is service connected or that happened during service. It's a little bitty clause in private insurance back then. And
That
so
has
it
to
was,
be covered by the VA then, but yet you have to
yes,
wait to get.
right, right. So it was like,
It's maddening.
it was this mad, like just you're stuck in everything. And the fall of 09, he got ill and we weren't sure what it was. We knew he had burn pit exposures. We knew he had chemical exposures. That was well documented. Um, and he got a cold and we're like, okay, no big deal. You know, it's just a cold. And 2 weeks into this cold, he ends up in a coma in ICU. Yeah, seriously. And he spent, I want to say 11 days in ICU. 10 of those were under coma. They told me on day 4 that I had just had a kid. I was actually pumping in the ICU room.
How
Yeah,
many kids are you at this point?
3. We had 3 at that point. So we
Okay.
had 5 total.
Now.
But we had 3. I was literally pumping from inside the ICU room because she had been born in July and it was November. He was hospitalized in October, went into November. And they go, well, we don't think he's going to make it. We're going to wake him up tomorrow and let him say goodbye to the kids. And
Oh
we're
my
like,
goodness.
oh my gosh, no. And we'd only been married like 3.5 years at that point, 4 years. And I remember just being so pissed off. And I was like, no, 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 we're not doing this. We're not doing this. And miracle of miracles, he actually turned that night. And if you know me at all, I have a very strong faith. I prayed over him that night. It was probably one of the few nights I in my life can remember praying unceasingly for hours.
Mm.
And fell asleep at 3 a.m. in the middle of prayer. And then the doctors came in at 4:30 and woke me up, and I'd kind of fallen asleep across the bed. And they're like, we just want to let you know his numbers changed. And I'm like, wait, what? And they're like, no, seriously, his numbers took 2 points in the positive direction. And we had been nothing but sliding. He was breathing out of less than 1% of his lung.
Mm.
Yeah, it was really bad. And they're like, we're allowed to, they said they couldn't turn up the pressure anymore because they'd blow his lungs. And that's why they were saying he's not going to make it. Um, and they told me, they're like, we can turn down the pressure 2 points. And I was like, what do you mean? And they're like, well, he got better. He's like, so we're going to put off waking him up this morning. And I said, okay. And so 7 days later, we woke him up from the coma. We had to reteach him how to swallow, to eat, to walk, all of it. The only good news we had was that his memories were intact, because they told us not to expect that either. And this is where it combines the stories. So he wakes up, everybody on the floor stops by because they were like, he was the one who was not supposed to make it. Everybody knew it. They're like, we're okay, you made it. We taught you how to swallow. We're going to send you upstairs for a while. We said, okay. They said, expect to be in the hospital 6 months in rehab. We're like, okay. He walked out on a walker about a month later.
Wow.
Yeah, he was home by December. It was madcap. And it was so funny because actually all his ICU nurses and his doctors met us at the door because they were like, you weren't supposed to make it and you were supposed to be here half a year. And it was
He's
totally
not
nuts.
having it. You're not having it. He's not. He's like, I
Yeah,
gotta get home. I got this wife who's managing these 3 kids, and if
he
this
was
doesn't kill me, she will.
he
Yeah.
was so tired of
Yeah.
hospitals. He's like, I don't want to do this. But here's where the journeys connect. When we got upstairs in that hospital, they gave me a list and they said, look, we don't know. We know his oxygen was depleted. We watched his numbers the entire time. We don't know that there's going to be brain damage because his numbers didn't dip that low, but we want you to look for this. And they gave me a list of symptoms of a TBI. And I looked at the list and started laughing hysterically and looked straight at the doctor and said, he already does half of this. And that was the first indication that we had any idea of that the issues he had weren't this like nebulous combat stress, but were indeed a traumatic brain injury.
How frustrating. Like you had a
Yes.
parachute fall, like you hit your head, duh.
Lost
Like that.
consciousness.
Yeah, isn't that like an obvious thing to check for? Like that's so frustrating.
Um, and honestly, when the other one they pulled out, because he was a combat engineer, meaning he blew things up. So he had a lot of explosive exposure. But like when they blew up the building in front of him, he had what they call altered consciousness for over 24 hours, meaning he doesn't remember it. He has just glimpses here and there. He doesn't know where he was. Like he remembers writing the report and he's like, the report was filed. So I know I did stuff.
Yeah.
And, in some of the memories he has are pretty gruesome because he was in charge of the cleanup. And he's like, so he just has these glimpses of really traumatic moments after that.
What are some of the other things, like if someone's listening, they're like, I wonder if my loved one has a TBI, like what are some of the other things to watch for?
So one of the first things, of course, is forgetfulness.
Mm-hmm.
Um, a slower lag, a drop in IQ. Those are some of like the top things. They don't have to happen though. But if you like, for my husband, he had a photographic memory and went to forgetful. That's a huge change. So if you see those kind of differences in cognition, pain that has no physical explanation is another sign. If it's a really bad TBI, especially straight after, you'll get headaches and slurring of speech.
Mm-hmm.
But my husband came back from deployment with migraines, and we had no idea why. Never had a headache or a migraine in his life, and came back from deployment with just crippling migraines. And like I said, nebulous pain, losing feeling in the limbs, but having no obvious reason for that. That was also a sign. We learned later, my husband, even with diet and exercise, started gaining weight. So if you have a certain portion of TBI, it can mess with your endocrine system and can make you gain weight, weight loss being really hard. It also messes with hormones and vitamin D. So if you have a TBI, I highly, highly recommend getting your vitamin D checked before it gets bad, and your hormone panels, because those are definitely things that don't tend to get checked a lot, but that we already knew were issues by '09, but no one connected it to the fact that,
They
that
were
this
all
was a TBI
entwined
thing.
together.
Yeah. And honestly, we went to the VA, we got him screened for TBI. They were like, no, 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 his IQ is too high. This was in 10. They literally told us his IQ was too high. He didn't have a TBI. We're like, okay. And so now you keep fighting for what's going on. And at the time, he kept losing functionality. And this is odd in the TBI world. For most TBIs, you have a drop in functionality after the TBI, and you do what's called level out. You have this kind of nice plateau and this new normal, and you make it work. I have heard that there are some people who experience another drop at the 10-year mark. Now, whether that's, clinical or not, I don't know. It was a neurologist who told me that. And he said, anecdotally, I have a lot of people who see another drop at the 10-year mark. And ironically, right at the 10-year mark, we started seeing some decline.
Like waiting for the other shoe to drop. It's
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I feel
Because
like
we
he
have,
came home to you like a minefield almost, like the military, and now it's like you're just like not sure what's gonna pop up next, like this
yeah.
whack-a-mole situation.
Well, we joke that he keeps it interesting. I mean, seriously.
That's
Every
one
day is
way.
something new.
That's one way to spice up your marriage.
Exactly. Exactly. All right. So I have a joke. So by 2018, he started losing consciousness. So he would just be going along and a smell would hit him or a light would hit him and he'd black out. Ironically, what we also found out is that if his head was going off and I kissed him, he blacked out too. So for the longest time, I joked with the doctors that, after, was it like 12 or 13 years of marriage, I could still make him weak in the knees.
Oh my gosh.
That was our joke for so long, still is, but
Well, you got to keep the humor with caregiving.
oh
And
gosh.
how do you, how do you, how have you been able to just keep smiling and showing up, and like what is it that helps you cope?
Oh, well, I mean, I have to be honest. There were years I was mad,
Hmm.
and especially when we weren't going on. Everybody was totally telling me, he's faking. This is not. This is just PTSD acting up. I mean, and it was all this line, if you will, especially dealing with the VA. They're like, oh well, and the VA has come a very long way. So please don't take this in a bad way. I mean, heck, back in 10, we still couldn't even take our kids in. Like we showed up at the VA in Minneapolis in 2010 and they stopped my husband and they're like, who are you here to see? Because you can't come in with a family. And he's like, I'm the veteran. And they made him actually provide an ID because they didn't believe him. We've come a really, really long way. Um, I worked with administration there to get kids involved. They now make them like care bags up in Minneapolis because we had providers who were like, you can't bring the kids in. I'm like, it's a nursing infant. What do you want me to do? And I was like, and plus we have female veterans with nursing
Yeah,
infants as
good for
well.
you, Kara. Like you're
And
helping to make the change.
like, you
Yeah.
can't, just, anyway.
So you were
So
angry, but then
I
you,
was angry.
yeah.
And you kind of buy into the line. And at some point, my husband and I sat down and talked with each other. And I had to come to grips with, who do you trust more? And I obviously trusted him. And we decided that no matter what, we would do this together. And we didn't know what was coming. And it didn't really matter what was coming. Um, I told him long ago, just come home. We'll deal with everything else, whether it's limb loss, I don't care. Just come home, right? Don't do it in a box. Just come home.
Mm.
And he reminded me of that. And I was like, okay, thank you. That was humbling. And so I started looking around it as like, look, I know my husband before, I know him after. There are things that are changing. And the civilian docs are telling me he has a TBI. So we're going to keep going for this and try to figure out, TBI. And I realized somewhere along that, by the time we had the fifth kid or the fourth kid, I was like, I don't want to be angry anymore. My kids don't deserve it. My husband doesn't deserve it. So I can either sit here and be angry and be pissed and want to just throw my hands up and yell at the world, or I can try to make the best of every day. And so I started with these little small steps, and I'd wake up and I'd be like, I'm not going to yell today. That was my big thing that I started after the birth of my fourth kid, I was like, I'm not going to yell anymore. We're just not going to do it. And I told the kids, I was like, you hear me yelling, you call me on it. And I didn't
They
let them
will.
yell.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't let them yell either. I was like, mom's going to do it. You're going to do it. We're going to get on this. And, and then I started doing just, look, my husband was always a joker. So how many jokes can we make today? How much laughter can we have? And it became a goal because the kids were stressed. They were watching dad decline to the point that, by 18, he was in a wheelchair and not walking. By 19, he was pretty much not walking.
Mhm.
And then of course you get like I can't live in this house, and you have the son who's like, I just want dad to play baseball with me. I mean, you have all these things. And we went to a retreat as a family. And if you're a veteran family with a mobility or a severe mobility issue, I can't recommend this retreat enough, from the Travis Mills Foundation. And we were chosen to go up, and we went up. And it was the first time, and this was 18, that anyone had ever told my husband, there is no, it's yes. What do you want to do? We'll make it happen.
Wow.
They got my husband up on a ropes course for the first time since he had been in the Army. My children got to see him in a whole different light. I mean, we have watched people without arms shoot archery. We have watched fully paralyzed get loaded into kayaks and get taken out on the water. There's just, they are miracle workers, and they're miracle workers for the family too, because they work it as a family. And having the kids see dad in that light and having me see dad in that light moved us from, okay, we're just going to shoot for laughter and we're going to shoot from just trying not to be pissed, to being truly grateful. It truly reorganized our mindset of, yeah, things are declining. Yes, he had gotten medically taken out of work by this point. So we were, financially, we were very tight at that time. We had to figure out how to make it work. I had just had to give up my part-time job. I had been a director of a nonprofit I had to step down from. I taught college. I had to step down from that. And so you get all of these things of like, this is what I did. And you're like, you know what? I got to let it go. So no more living in the past, no more living about what could have been, what would have, should have, right? And then moving into, we're just going to wake up and enjoy today. And if he wakes up today, excellent. We're going to figure out what we can do today. And with the kids too, it was, I wish dad could do this and I wish dad could do that. And I was like, well, let's find something dad and you can do. And so we really refocused the family. That was kind of our turning point. And I love it because now it's, my kids are just, in the family is just like, whatever.
That's a life skill for them. Like it's a
Yeah.
total gift for you all. Yeah, I mean, there's so much power in a mindset shift like that, and I loved the power of the prayer too. Like I think there's a lot of things. The mind is just really powerful when it comes to that, and you're setting the trajectory for your family, and seeking happiness, and it's contagious. I love that. You're getting me choked up there, Caira. I know that you're in an advocacy role now too, that you can help take these tools and these things that have helped you, and you can help other military families with that. So talk a little bit about how you're involved with helping other military family caregivers.
Sure. And I will say too, just one quick thought before I forget,
Yeah.
it is a choice. Mindset is totally a choice. And I remember distinctly that conversation in the household of, I can be pissed and I can be mourn, or I can choose to laugh. And I would much rather laugh than cry because I hate to cry. So, all right. So advocacy. Well, as you realized, our story with the VA was not easy. And it wasn't smooth. And my husband and I really got to the point, especially now where we've like fought to get what they call service connection for things that happen. But I mean, he technically wasn't diagnosed with a TBI by the VA until 2018.
Wow.
So we are talking 18 years after his first impact and 15 years after his first deployment. And the amount of medical good we could have done in that time was lost. And him and I both decided that if we could at all help, even if it was on a small scale, it didn't matter. We were going to, because no person should have to go through what we did. Being brushed aside, being gaslighted, being told we're crazy, getting sent through, just, yeah, I mean, it's a horror story. And we were so upset about it. We were like, no other person should do this. So I'm a researcher by trade. So I taught art history in college. I was an art historian and a historic preservationist, did archival work.
Cool.
This is my
That's your
jam.
jam.
This is my jam. I like the power of the internet, right? I scoured the internet for what we could do. And anytime I learned this little detail about how to work this or how to work that, I would stick it in this folder, in this little notebook. And then I'd get to talking to people while we were waiting on appointments, or we were at, I guess at, 15, 16, 17, we were over at the hospital 3 times a week, at least. It was insane.
Yeah.
He had surgery. We were there every day. I started talking to people and they're like, well, I don't know how to do this. And I don't know. And I'm like, I have an answer. I have an answer for that. And then we had a really significant issue that I went to the top for. And because it was such a bad issue, an appointment coordinator had thrown his appointment card for an appointment he needed. Because it used to be you went in with these cards and the appointment takers would take the cards and they'd make your appointment. It was the only way to make an appointment. It was the only way to do it back then. And she was going to lunch. So instead of making the appointment, she threw the card in her desk and it sat there for 8 months.
Days.
Yeah. And it was medical care the doctor wanted done in like 3 weeks. I went to the top with that one because I was like, that's ridiculous.
First of all, the process is stupid. And secondly, this is, yes.
Everyone else can figure this out, right?
Yes.
And so I was so upset. And so I went to the top, and because I made a decent argument and did so with a calm head, I was listened to. And that's another piece of advice I'll give is no matter how mad you are, just stay even keeled and you'd be amazed what will get listened to. We got assigned a advocate who walked for 1.5 years the journey with us. If I had any problem, I'd call her. If I had a mess up, I'd call her.
Through the VA.
With the VA.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And again, it was kind of an unheard of thing. And I learned a lot. We would chat. We got to be friends. We would talk. She remembered the kids because we were over there a lot. And I would swing by and be like, how's your day? In her office. And I learned a lot. And all of those things I learned, all those processes, all that, how do we get this done? I'd write them down. And then if I talk to anybody and I don't know how to do, oh, we ran into that one. I know how to make that work. And I started just talking to people, saying, here's how you do this and here's how you do that. And I wasn't really tied in with the nonprofit world. It was really more of a local, anything I could do, I would try to help. And then I went to the Travis Mills Foundation and I got talking to some people there, which trajected me into, I was helping with a nonprofit who made weighted blankets for children with autism. So I was on a board there, and then meeting some people at the Travis Mills Foundation, I got trajected into more of the veteran nonprofit world. And I'm a gabber, like I can gab. So we gabbed, we talked, we shared resources, and I learned, again, went into my little book, right?
Yep.
And I just kept making more and more connections. And, helping where I could. I eventually became an Elizabeth Dole Fellow in 19. Is that right? Yeah, 19.
What does an Elizabeth Dole Fellow do?
Well, it kind of varies from fellow to fellow. Everybody comes, and it depends on what's going on in our life, and everybody comes in wanting to help. And so we do a target audience for who we want to help. My target audience was kids of disabled veterans, because they get shafted a lot and there's a lot of stress. and we don't necessarily have the finances to say send them to sports or do this or do that, because many of us are living on a disability income, and we don't necessarily have paid caregiver stipends, or we don't have other help coming in or retirement income coming in. Some of us have SSDI at this point, some of us don't. And so the kids miss out on a lot. I will tell you point blank, a lot of my kids grew up in medical hospitals. From the time 3 of them obviously were nursing. Remember the whole ICU trip, right?
Yep.
The last 3, I mean, they went with us. They just went with us. We were at the hospital so much, I ended up homeschooling them, because there was no way. We had to drive 2 hours to get to the hospital, and there was no way to get to the hospital and back before childcare ended at the end of school. And so we homeschooled. And I'm not the only one to do it. I know many veteran families who do, and it's not a bad thing. Homeschooling became a huge blessing for us. We've done it for over 10 years, but for us, it was the only applicable answer. And so when I took on the fellowship, it was, how can I help the kids? Because the kids, they may not be seeing sports due to finances. We lived up north where hockey was a big thing. And let me tell you, I would have never been able to afford a hockey season. You have traveling leagues that I'm like, I can't even show up at a game, let alone travel, because, those 3 days a week were over, with PT or OT or whatever. And that's above and beyond all the stress of, my parent can't do this or my parent can't do that.
Yeah, you just want to be a kid. You just want to fit
Yeah.
in.
Yeah. And instead you're figuring out how to help your disabled parent make sure he remembers meds, make sure, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I like to call it normal for us. It's not normal for everyone. It's not that they take on the responsibility of caregiving, but the kids want to help. And so normal for them is, hey, the alarm's going off, take your pills. Normal for them is, let me open the door, because it doesn't have an automatic button, right? And now we have a service dog, so they don't do this as much anymore, but dad dropped something, let me pick it up off the floor. Some people look down on that, but I think you have to realize when you have a disability in the house, this is normal. And it's not that anyone's saying you got to do that, or they're willingly helping caregive in their own
Yeah.
way.
On a
But
side note, I talked to Richard Louie on a different episode, and he's produced Sky Blossoms. I don't know if you've seen that. Yeah. So
yeah,
I think it kind of paints that picture of what
yeah,
that looks like for a young military caregiver family member. What is the
absolutely.
answer for the kids? Like, what are some of the tips and tools that you share for these families? That is it validating it, or is there something that you recommend that they do?
I think it's totally validating it. I think it's also realization on the parents' part too.
Mm-hmm.
As a military child, your kids went through deployment. Your kids went through. There's a whole stress load in deployment, and when you're in, you have the family readiness group, and you have all these resources, and then you get out, and they go away. So one of the things I try to help do was connect nonprofits and help push for more resources for the kids.
Mm-hmm.
So realize as a parent, your kids are more stressed. They just are. And whether they're expressing that to you, they're still stressed. And some of them won't express it to you because they're worried they're going to stress you out more. And so realize that's going on behind the scenes. Don't forget to take time out with your kids. Don't forget to try to get at least, even if it's one-on-one time, 15 minutes of painting nails in a bedroom. I don't care. Make sure you carve out that time so that you can listen to your kid and build that relationship. Because I think we all know when you have, and Heather's even spoken to this, when you have a disability in the house, sometimes the focus is very, very structured around that. And you have to make sure that you get focus for everyone else in the household too. And I'm speaking from this as like a house of 7. Like it's work, guys. It's work,
Yeah,
people.
15 minutes for everybody. That's a big day.
Yeah. But 15 minutes a day for one person throughout the week, one every day, we got it made,
Yeah.
break it into chunks you can. And then once you hit that realization, you can start looking for resources for your kids. I love our military kids. They will help fund.
That's an organization. Our
That is an
military.
organization.
I'm
Sorry.
going to link to some of these things that we'll link to them all in those show notes. Our military
Wonderful.
kids.
Yay.
Yeah.
So I love our military kids. They help fund organization, like they help fund extracurriculars for children
Thank
of,
you.
you're
Yes.
welcome. For children who are deployed soldiers or airmen, Marines, all branches, or what they call severely disabled. There are criteria for disability. You can have so many per child over the lifetime of the child, but go use them. They're phenomenal. And they verify everything once you get your child enrolled. I know, like right now, they helped me fund a gymnastics class for my little one.
Love it.
So, so I love our military kids. Don't be afraid to look at camp opportunities, especially since COVID hit. We're doing some of these virtually. I know Camp Corral, I've done some advocacy with.
Corrall.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Just like if you're Southern, okay, and you see Golden Corrals all the time. Golden Corral actually helps fund Camp Corral.
Nice. Thank you, Golden
Yes.
Corral. Yes.
Yes. And so they do a summer camp week for children of disabled, wounded, ill, or injured, or fallen. So your kids go, and it's not only a respite week for them, it's a week for them to meet other people in similar situations.
Mhm.
And it's free to the family. So all you have to do is get them there. So their application window, by the way, if you're listening, comes up in January. So
Okay. This
be on
is
the
coming out in
lookout.
January.
Coming out in
So
January.
I love it.
I love it. And we have some needs in the house when our children, and we love Camp Southern Ground as well. That is a camp in Georgia, not far from where
For
you're
me,
at.
I'm in Marietta, Georgia.
Yeah, see, it's not far from you. It's over in Fayetteville.
What was it
And
called again? Camp
Fayetteville, anyway, Camp Southern Ground.
Southern Ground.
Yep.
Yes.
So,
Nice.
and they will not only they help with military, but it's an all-inclusive camp. So parents who are sitting there rolling your eyes at me going, I have a child with ASD, I have a child with special needs, we can't do these kind of things. Yes, you can.
Yep.
Yes, you can. I'm all inclusive loves. They are fully accessible, even to the bathrooms and the bunks at the residences. Like, it's phenomenal. All right. Allergy inclusive too. I know we deal with the higher special needs population in the military world. Don't worry about it. They'll take care of
Yeah.
you. Promise. I promise.
I love it.
And they don't do necessarily military weeks, but they do scholarship weeks. So there's a tier system there. So it can be very affordable. Let's see. I love Kids Rank is another one that is chock full with resources. Let's see.
These are so new to me, so I'm excited because I'll follow, and then because I like to do what you like to do, Caira, is just like amplify and connect people to things that are gonna get them out of their funkiness.
Yeah, and I love connecting people. For me,
Yeah.
it is like it is happiness. Like, let me help you. We all have issues, and if we're not there for each other, that's just sad. So come at me. Let me see what we can do.
Yeah.
And
I
then
love it.
the other one
If you think of others, definitely share them, and we can throw them in the show notes too.
we're gonna do one more, if that's
Yeah.
okay. Really big one,
Yeah.
because their application window's coming up. Folds of Honor. If you have not checked out Folds of Honor and you are a military caregiver with children in the household, they will help scholarship both for private elementary and high school, but also college. They will also help you afford tutoring. All right.
That's amazing.
So if you have a retirement, remember military, if you're retired, you get tutor.com for free, but a lot of us aren't retired. So how do we deal with that? Because we don't have that resource. Folds of Honor can
Folds
help.
of Honor fills the
We
gap.
know that those therapies, we know that those tutorings are expensive. So, and I know I'm trying to watch time too.
No, it's good. It's good. I want to give a minute to the lightning round for you, because I know that this has been so helpful for people, and they're like, I want Caira in my pocket to help navigate these things. So just, yes, thank you for sharing all these. So we're going to do a quick lightning round, which is from the Just For You Daily Self-Care Journal. These are just all self-care prompts. There's no right answer. Okay, when you were young, you probably had a stuffed animal or security blanket. What item brings you comfort now?
Wow. I did have a stuffed animal as a kid. What do I have
I
know.
did too. I had a Humpty Dumpty pillow. It was kind of interesting.
Let's see. What do I take out on a bad day? You know what? This is going to be really silly. When I have a really bad day, I take out, my husband wore his dog tags and a St. Christopher medal when he was
Hmm.
deployed, and I will wear them when I'm having a really, really shitty
Yes.
day. So
I love that.
that probably sounds stupid, but there you go.
No,
Because
no, no,
it's
there's no, nothing stupid. Well, I think
it's
you
such a
kind of answered.
reminder for me that there's a purpose. If we made it, there's a purpose. Don't give up.
For sure. When you, okay, close your eyes and picture something. You don't really have to close your eyes, but picture something good happening in your life. What did you visualize?
I'm writing a book.
Thank goodness. When is your book coming out?
It's actually not nonfiction, it's fiction.
Even
I
better. Is it have anything to do with caregiving or military? Or is it just completely fun fiction?
No, well, it's a thriller, but it does have to do with both caregiving and military.
Okay.
So I will hopefully be done and ready to publish in May. I'm going to try to find a publisher, but it follows a 28-year-old archivist who was a caregiver to her terminally ill child and lost her child, and she's in this real slump after all of that. And her friend asked her to go through some paperwork for his grandfather who was World War II, and she finds inconsistencies that lead her into danger as she uncovers something. I can't tell you what it is, but she uncovers something that nobody wants her to uncover because all the papers this officer left behind don't match up the official records.
Okay. Bump, 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 bump. Well, I want to read it, Kara, I do these book hauls for caregiving.
Oh,
Yeah, blog posts. So I will put it in that. And then also have a call later today with, so I didn't write about dementia or Alzheimer's, but my book is part of the Alz authors community, and they have many caregiving books that are part of
okay.
their community. So I'll ask them on my writer's call today if anybody can recommend any publishers, so I can see if I'll get any little leads on that. But that's exciting.
But I love it because we can bring out some of those realities of caregiving and her situation without kind of falling into the nonfiction cycle. It's so
Yes,
nice to open up windows to our lives in these small little glimpses
I love
for
it.
everyday
What's your
people.
character's name?
Isa, her name is Isa Renard.
Like, oh my gosh, she's got a whole life of her own. I love it.
Yeah.
Um, all right, if
So,
and then last question for you: if you could choose one superpower, what would it be?
oh, um, that one's hard.
I know. I mine always comes to mind is like I want to be like the person who could just be somewhere else, like just like I'd love to, just hang out and have coffee right now with my sister in Michigan, or um, just with a just what is that time? Not time travel, but just be somewhere else. But
I think that might be it. Because one of the things that still makes me sad on days is I'm the only driver in the house. So,
mm,
and with 4 kids trying to get to everything, we have to say no a lot. And like if I had the superpower of I could like duplicate myself just for driving purposes,
they're
that would be
cloning.
awesome.
Yeah.
Actually, I
Kara
could
number
love
one, can
that.
you go do this? Kara number two, like
Yeah.
you know how to do it. Oh, that's good. I might steal
Yeah.
that one.
And that and that way we could make it to like every game and every this and every that. So yeah, there you go.
I love that. Well, I have really enjoyed this conversation with you. Is
Yeah.
there anything that we didn't touch on that you feel like, hey, we can't wrap this up without saying this one more thing? And then also, how do people get in touch with you if they want even more?
Oh, well, I can drop my email.
Okay.
That's good. You can also you can stalk us on Instagram. Although
What's your
I'm not a,
Instagram handle?
it's at our adapted life.
Okay.
So, and I need to get more on that. But
And they could direct message you there as
yeah.
well. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. And I can drop my email. I have a Facebook, but I keep that more for personal side now. that I'm not an active Dole Fellow anymore. I'm an alum. So I got to step back a little bit from that. So I will post my email too. Otherwise, what else okay. For you people who like resources or need resources, I highly recommend hiddenheroes.com. So that is nothing but military resources for caregivers, aimed at caregivers.
Mm-hmm.
And I highly recommend what's called Patriot Link. And Patriot Link is also kind of a resource house. And the lovely people over at Quota Support can help you find what you need to. There's a lot of us who are out there. Hidden Heroes will help you get in contact too with a local fellow. Feel free to reach out. There are so many of us. If we can, that's what we do. We help as much as we can.
Mm-hmm.
And the only other thing I would say is self-care can be very daunting. And as caregivers, Elizabeth knows this, we hear get self-care all
Yeah,
the time.
we get shit on all the time.
Yes. Stop shitting on yourself.
Yeah.
Realize self-care looks different for everybody else. But if I can encourage you to do it, don't think you have to do it big. 5 minutes. Like all of us can snack out 5 minutes, right? My husband will nap 5 minutes. I got you, right? Even if it's 5 minutes on your drive to pick up kids in car line, whatever it is, take your 5 minutes. If it's music, blare your music. If it's whatever you need, happy dance, I don't care. Just figure out what you can do in 5 minutes that gives you that, so you can conquer it all again.
So we've got a whole echo that is agreeing with you today, which it's the UPS man. He's here. But I love that because they're just like, yes, Caira. Well, thank you so much, Caira, for coming on today. And I know that people are going to get a lot out of this, and I look forward to just continuing to watch you and your family blossom and see where you all go in life.
Well, thanks for having me. This is great.